Emma, would you go stand in front of the piano? Beautiful. And please stand in front of the lecture, the whatever it's called. The lectern. Thank you. Perfect. I feel like it could be closer, but it's fine. Oh, Emma, there was that thing that you wanted, a slide. Someone to hit the next slide.
Oh, yeah?
Do you want someone in the front to do that?
Oh, yeah, that'd be nice. Do you remember? Do you want to go? No?
My German's not that good.
I looked for a little clicker, but I didn't see any, so. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I just could, and that would be fine. There's a mic back here.
I'm a little far away, so someone will have to move closer. Just to hit the next slide at a certain point. Emma will say something. She did it the last time. Yeah.
Do you want
to sit down?
That would be nice if you would do it in the German. Yeah, thank you. I'll sit down. My plan.
Oh, you're banished.
Banished.
The dog will just go out.
But this is earlier than I thought it was. Don't even.
Okay. I'll try to remember.
Now that Thomas and Sasha are here, should we?
You may.
We may begin finally. All right. Well, thanks for joining me today, everybody. I didn't expect so many folks to still be on campus with break looming, but thank you for being here. It's nice to feel so supported. So today I'll be sharing a little bit of the research I've been doing on gender hysteria and insanity generally as it's depicted in opera, starting around the time of bel canto up until the modern era of music. So first, I'll start by giving you a little overview of the development of psychiatry and some famous psychiatrists of the time. So these are just a few of the most influential psychiatrists in Europe and were a major part of developing ideas on female hysteria and madness in the 19th and early 20th centuries. Cesare Lombroso is known for his theories on criminal anthropology and associated hysteria with biological determinism. He argued that certain, quote, degenerate women were predisposed to hysteria and framed it within a narrative of evolutionary inferiority. If you hadn't noticed, he was a eugenicist, and his views have been widely discredited, but they do clearly reflect the era's tensions between biology, morality, and mental health. Thomas Clouston argued that good mental health for women depended on adherence to Victorian norms, or gender norms, and class norms more generally. He believed that a woman's fulfillment was found primarily in marriage and motherhood, which he saw as vital not only for individual women and their sanity, but also for society's future. He believed that the surest way for a woman to become hysterical was by neglecting her womanly duties. Sigmund Freud is probably the most popular, well-known amongst us, I would say. He's well-known for introducing psychoanalytical theory, and he framed hysteria as a manifestation of repressed emotions and unresolved conflicts, especially as it pertains to sexuality, which I think we know him for. His work on the unconscious mind and defense mechanisms reshaped the perceptions of female madness, linking it to broader societal issues of gender and repression. So as I just mentioned, it was commonly believed that good mental health for women was dependent on adherence to gender norms and cultural norms. To summarize a few of the ideas of these fabulous psychiatrists you've just heard about, women who behaved promiscuously were thought to be more likely to experience hysterics. This could mean sexual promiscuity or otherwise, like not wanting to marry someone you've been betrothed to, or God forbid, not wanting to marry at all. This is one reason that portrayals of hysterical women often involve sexualization of the women in this era. A woman must be mad to express herself sexually, was the idea. And cultural norms at the time had a much broader idea of hypersexuality. So in this image here by Arachtingi, you can see it's a room full of medical men and men of science studying this hysterical female patient who is in a very improper posture and looks hypersexual with this off-the-shoulder look. You'll see throughout my presentation that I've tried to put depictions of hysterical or insane women from creators of the time largely, though there are some newer artists as well. So, a woman's way to fulfillment in life was through marriage and motherhood, hopefully in that order. This is not only supposedly to serve the women of the society, but also society, because women's chief work was the future of the world, producing babies, while men's chief work was the running of the world, which is the present. Any inability to adapt to the demands of maternity and domesticity was an inability to perform a woman's most important and fundamental life functions. To reach this womanly fulfillment, it was thought that women ought to cease to become educated just before adolescence and or reproductive maturity, as overeducated women produced fewer offspring, and those born would be of a, quote, puny kind, which is my favorite quote from this presentation. It was thought that reproduction placed sizable demands on the minds and constitution and would exhaust them if maturation was done in conjunction with anything else. This means that a lot of women, once they reached a time just before maturation, were just kept in the house to do the easy work of keeping a whole house running and mending clothes and things like that. So in Europe especially, there is this rigid division of labor in asylums. It was thought that an important factor in women regaining their senses was to get them back to performing their womanly duties. So women were often expected to focus on nurturing and supporting other patients, reflecting social norms that emphasize their roles as mothers and caretakers. Many 19th century psychiatrists believed women to be more vulnerable to insanity due to an inherent instability in their reproductive systems, which were thought to interfere with rational control. This instability of the female reproductive system refers not just to childbearing, but to all female reproductive life cycle. So things including puberty, pregnancy, childbirth, breastfeeding, menopause. As long as you have a uterus, you are more fragile. So here are just a couple of common diagnoses for hysterical women of the time or insane women of the time. So puerperal mania is one common diagnosis. It's usually a diagnosis for new mothers, or mothers of new babies, I guess, rather, or pregnant women. You can see why it was probably a common diagnosis at the time, as women in this era were often pregnant or had recently given birth. So symptoms were things like moments of violence, as well as severe melancholia. Infanticide was also seen to be a great threat in these diagnoses. So maybe more familiarly to us, hysteria was a broad diagnosis historically used to describe various symptoms in women, including things like anxiety or even just general physical complaints. So it comes from the Greek word for uterus, which makes it easy to trace the belief that the female reproductive system is the root of the problem. Hysteria was strongly associated with abnormal female menstruation, and it reflected societal biases that dismissed legitimate mental or physical health issues. It was a popular Victorian belief as well that masturbation played a role in hysteria. Masturbation at the time was thought to be a male vice, so you can also see how there's a little bit of gender crossing that they could help diagnose hysterical behaviors. So both of these conditions representative of women's intrinsic biological weakness, which was the teaching at the time. One other note I think is interesting is that I had this idea that when somebody was institutionalized, it was maybe more of like a lock them, throw the key away type of thing, but the average length of stay could just be a period of weeks or months. There were also different treatments for hysterical women depending on their class. So something that I actually thought was really heartwarming was that poorer classes of women who were diagnosed with hysteria were often just taken in and given food and rest, because a lot of these women were coming in totally overworked from their large families and running these crazy households, and probably also trying to take in extra work at the same time to bring in money. It was also fairly common that their husbands would discharge them from care just to get them back home to carry on with things, even if their doctors hadn't, declared them cured of hysteria. So I liked this quote: "Trapped in a man's world, Victorian women often escaped into madness, which was viewed as the only permissible way for them to speak the truth and solve the tensions and pressures of their untenable position." And that, I think, is reflected in this idea that a lot of women who just needed food and rest were declared hysterical either by themselves or a kind-hearted doctor that wanted to get them a little bit of rest. This also is an idea that pretty clearly translates into the opera and art song that you're going to hear in the next little while. Some of these women really just needed a break, and maybe their madness in some ways was a little bit of a mercy to them. So, psychiatry as a specialized field emerged in the early 19th century. Before psychiatry, mental illness was the domain of philosophers who often related madness to morality or religion. In this project, I am looking specifically at depictions of madness in opera starting around the time of the emergence of psychiatry. I will just mention briefly, though, that in the Baroque and classical eras, madness was often viewed as a spiritual affliction, with influences from ancient Greek theories on the humors and Renaissance humanism. A couple of examples of operas from this time are Handel's Orlando and Mozart's Idomeneo. Both operas feature mad scenes that reflect the belief that there was a spiritual connection to insanity. It's Orlando's rage or jealousy that drives him into madness, and Electra's rage leads her into her mad scene. So again, jealousy and rage are thought to be mortal sins, or the greatest type of sin, by the church at the time, which is, the Catholic Church is kind of the big one in power for a lot of history, recent history. So for a brief overview of some of the areas you'll be hearing this evening. In the bel canto era, madness is portrayed through emotional outbursts and virtuosic singing from characters like Lucia and Lucia de Lammermoor, whose insanity stems from heartbreak and betrayal, reflecting romantic ideals of passion and tragedy. In the late Romantic era, madness has emotional intensity, with characters often being depicted as tragic figures struggling with inner turmoil, with emphasis on the consequences of their passions in a dramatic and often fatalistic manner, as we'll see in Ophelia in a few minutes. Composers began to focus on relatable characters and stories as Verismo is on the horizon here. For example, Bizet's Carmen featured everyday people like a soldier and a mysterious traveler. Carmen even includes a mad scene for the male lead at an attempt of realism. Late 19th and early 20th centuries saw less gendered portrayals of insanity more generally. So with evolving understandings of mental health, in the modern era, there's more focus on societal pressures and personal trauma, as we can see in works like The Streetcar Named Desire or Wozzeck, where madness reflects harsh realities and the complexities of the human psyche. I'd like to take a minute now to talk about the connection between the voice-type lyric coloratura and the depiction of hysteria in bel canto opera. I believe that the use of this Fach in these roles reflects the broader societal beliefs about femininity and mental health in the culture of the time. So some of the vocal characteristics. The lyric coloratura's voice is agile and light, which does a great job at mirroring the mania and chaos of hysteria. Rapid melismas can help represent that manic behavior, creating a sense of young characters, which I think highlights past societal perceptions of femininity and vulnerability or fragility. The clash between innocence and intense emotions also helps to heighten the sense of tragedy. I have mentioned that there is an association of sexuality with hysteria at this time, while other female fox are also asked to express sexuality. The lyrical literatura uniquely embodies a youthful, flirtatious quality in mad roles, showing a form of hysterical sexuality distinct from other fox, in my opinion. So the first composer you'll hear today is Gaetano Donizetti. For the sake of this project, all you need to know about him is that he's a quintessential bel canto composer. He's written many other frequently performed operas like Fille de Regiment, Le Désir d'amour, and Anna Bolena, which actually also has a mad scene in it. An interesting fact about Donizetti is that he died in an insane asylum after going mad himself. It was found out after he died that he died of neurosyphilis, which explains the madness. There was something literally eating away at his brain. I couldn't find any connection to him coming up with ideas of hysteria and insanity in his operas at the time that he was starting to experience his loss of sense as he was losing his mind. So it's really more just like an interesting tidbit because I can't find specific instances that I can see a correlation. So Lucia de Lammermoor is composed in 1835 and set in 17th century Scotland. This opera tells the tragic tale of Lucia Ashton, who loves Edgardo di Ravenswood, but is forced by her brother Enrico to marry Arturo. Overwhelmed by her forced marriage and lack of control in her own life, Lucia descends into madness, killing Arturo on their wedding night. The opera ends with Edgardo's discovery of Lucia's fate, and he then commits suicide. Lucia's madness stems from heartbreak, which is a result of her failure to obediently meet the expectations that her brother has for her marriage. So a marriage which is arranged to serve the family. And you can track some ideas there of psychiatrists at the time and women failing to fulfill their duties to their families. Throughout the show, Lucia's athletic coloratura passages reflect her high spirits in a way that attempts to warn the audience that she's prone to hysteria. In the famous mad scene, which you will not be hearing right now, Lucia's frantic coloratura and elaborate ornaments reflect her disorientation and disassociation from reality. Sudden shifts in volume from soft and delicate to powerful outbursts convey her emotional instability and heightened states of distress. The melodies in her mad scene can feel disjointed, mimicking the chaos in her mind. This fragmentation helps to illustrate her break from reality. Earlier in the show, Lucia sings more lyrical arias, and we only occasionally get glimpses of hysteria. Regnava nel silencio and Quando repito, that's one of those scenes where you get that glimpse, and that's what we'll hear in just a moment. There are also moments of silence or sparse instrumentation, which help heighten tension and emphasize her isolation and despair. The orchestra plays a crucial role in setting the mood. Donizetti uses the flute as the aural representation of Lucia's relationship with madness. So Lucia and the flute even have a duet to represent her new budding reality. With that, I would like to sing a scene from Lucia de l'Amour. Thank you. He inspired composers like Verdi and Wagner by the large scale of his works. He died pretty young, as you can see by his dates, and we don't have all that many compositions or operas by him because of that. I Puritani is one of relatively few. I do say relatively because that's in comparison to Donizetti's 75-ish operas, and 11 is not a ton of operas compared to that. Rossini also had 40 operas. So, I Puritani is set during the English Civil War and tells the story of Elvira and Arturo, whose love is challenged by their different allegiances. Elvira's family are Puritans and Arturo is a royalist. Though Elvira's father supports their marriage, Arturo complicates matters when he aids the Queen, the recent widow of Charles I, in escaping captivity of the Puritans, using Elvira's wedding veil on their wedding day. So when he leaves, Elvira thinks that he's run away to marry another woman, which maybe is, I think, fair, because she just saw another woman in a wedding veil run away with her fiancé. When Arturo secretly returns to find Elvira, he finds that she has gone insane with the knowledge that her betrothed has left her for another woman. To make things worse, when he does come back and finds her in this state, he's captured by the Puritans, and they are just about to execute him when Elvira regains her senses, magically, and is there just in time to see him die. But they receive news at truly the last moment that Lord Cromwell, who's now taken power in this war, has pardoned all prisoners. And they actually get a happy ending. She's regained her senses, he's kept his life, and they have a happily ever after, which is not normal in opera. So unlike Lucia, Elvira has her family's blessing to marry whoever she likes. Her temporary insanity is a result of being left by her betrothed, which would make her diagnosis maybe more like general hysteria. By Victorian standards, Elvira shouldn't be so upset by the loss that it affects her ability to contribute to her society. Her over-emotional reaction suggests that maybe she wasn't stable to begin with. And if you'll remember back a few slides, having a uterus makes you an unstable person. So there are a lot of reasons she probably went insane. So this uses this cavatina cavaletta compositional style, which you just saw in the Lucia. This style is really well suited to depicting madness because it shows you the slow, thoughtful, sad, longing, and then the manic, right back to back. The use of coloratura in bel canto was a helpful tool in showing mental instability or high emotion. This role uses an extensive range by highlighting Elvira's in order to highlight Elvira's detachment from reality. Another staple of bel canto is frequent moments for solo and out-of-time cadenzas. And this, again, allows for a depiction of the separation from reality in the character. So with that, here's Qui la voce and Candidetto. Thank you. Great. So that's the end of our bel canto section. Now we're moving into Richard Strauss. So in the late Romantic era, Strauss was a vital composer for the development of the modern era of music to come. He was greatly admired during his life for his progressive compositions, and he also was a renowned conductor. Some of his most well-known operas are Elektra, Salome, and Der Rosenkavalier. So some fun facts about this song cycle. Strauss didn't originally plan to write this. He didn't necessarily want to because there are all sorts of disputes going on between artists and publishers and who had the rights to what. But he did owe a set of 6 songs to his publishers, Bote and Volk. And in 1918, he sent them those next 6 songs. The first 3 songs are what you're going to hear right now. They're the Ophelia Lieder, and the last half of the songs that he sent to them are settings of Goethe texts. The texts of this cycle that you're about to hear, the Ophelia Lieder, are taken from Hamlet and translated into German by Karl Joseph Zimrock. Everything Ophelia sings are bits and bobs of old ballads that would have been familiar to Shakespeare's audience. Hamlet, if you don't know the storyline, is a play by William Shakespeare, likely written between the years 1599 and 1601. So in this, Hamlet mourns the death of his father and believes that his uncle Claudius murdered him in order to marry Hamlet's mother and ascend the throne. Throughout the play, Hamlet tries to prove Claudius's guilt and avenge his father's death. Ophelia is the daughter of the king's chief counselor. She's in love with Hamlet the whole show, though it's unclear whether Hamlet also loves her for much of this play. Hamlet kills Polonius, who is Ophelia's dad, and that is really kind of the beginning of her descent into madness. He thinks that he's killing the murderer of his father. Ophelia's death is often thought to be one of the most poetic and influential in literary history, making it a great source of inspiration for centuries of artists to come. I have a lot of Ophelia art in this presentation as proof of that. Oops. Ophelia's environment in this play is often very unstable feeling. She has lots of expectations to meet as the daughter of the king's chief counselor. Additionally, Hamlet uses her for his own devices and makes her think he loves her one minute while The fact that her crush Hamlet is the one that kills her dad is also certainly a traumatic point in the story for her. I like this quote from Elaine Showalter from her book Representing Ophelia. She points out at one point that that Ophelia's character and storyline are completely dependent on Hamlet's existence. Her major plot points completely revolve around him. However, Hamlet's story could still unfold even without Ophelia as a character. I just think that's a poignant thing to note as we think about why she went insane. So I'm going to tell you about the next three pieces so that I don't have to interrupt the flow of this amazing cycle. So in the first piece, you'll hear the use of ostinato in the left hand along with syncopations to portray Ophelia's instability. Similarly, he blurs bar lines, and that gives off this atmospheric sense of unpredictability and again helps show the distance between Ophelia's old and new realities. Of course, he uses chromaticism and dissonance. At the establishment of the ostinato, the right hand begins to play a hopeless wandering motif, according to the author Del Mar. This chromaticism offers the listener no clear tonal center, in addition to this unstable feeling in the ostinato. And the piece actually does end without resolution. Generally, there is no clear tonal center. The exception of this is the word liebe schauen, which is the only phrase to begin on a downbeat, and where E major is briefly established. This translates to love shiver or love shudder, and the key in rhythmic clarity here suggests that perhaps Ophelia's madness could have been cured by love. In the second piece, the driving manic rhythm of this piece is in great contrast with the first piece and represents how quickly and drastically moods can change in the hysterical. Though one could mistake this for a happy piece, the conclusion of this, played by the piano, I think, shows the true feelings behind the story. The text is a body song and one that a high court official's daughter probably shouldn't know and definitely shouldn't sing. The text also feels, I think, rather stream of consciousness, at least how Strauss has said it. There is much shifting from major to minor abruptly, which gives the listeners a glimpse into Ophelia's head. Strauss includes dramatic dynamic changes, often in the middle of phrases. These dramatic switches are also to illustrate her manic behavior. And the last piece. This piece feels as if it has two contrasting stories being told. While it's most often a dirge, there are interjections of a jaunty ballad. The tonality change is stark and also accompanied by time signature changes. At one point, the piano and the voice are in different time signatures. Strauss's use of a cappella is, I think, very effective. Amidst contrasting sections, there are also these very sparse feeling sections. The voice is left alone to continue the disjointed story. And like the other pieces we've heard this evening, Strauss uses heavy chromaticism to give the listener a sense of sliding away into non-reality. Thank you. Streetcar Named Desire is a very heavy show. It's very fitting for opera. Blanche Dubois, she's American, leaves her decaying Mississippi plantation after the death of her husband. She moves to New Orleans to live with her sister Stella and her sister's husband. And eventually the audience begins to learn about Blanche's past, which is full of tragedy and certainly affects her mental state. The contrast between her refined background or upbringing and her new gritty environment drives the story's conflict. Throughout the course of the story, we learn that Blanche's husband, Alan Gray, committed suicide after Blanche saw him cheating on her with a man. The fragmentation of her life and her stubborn clinging to the dream world she has made for herself lead to her mad scene. This mirrors the developing ideas of psychiatry at the time, with the source of her hysteria stemming from personal trauma. It's a much less gendered reason for insanity. Again, as you may have guessed, chromaticism is a really huge part of how hysteria is depicted. Though this piece is in some ways easier on the ears than the Strauss you just heard, its use of chromaticism reveals a gritty reality beneath atmospheric dreams. Previn uses these leaps, sometimes at odd intervals, that show the distance between Blanche's reality, which she has made up for herself as maybe some sort of coping mechanism, and the real world. Much of the dissonance is in the piano, and it gives Blanche an ethereal yet incongruous space to float above. Real, who wants real?
That's all, folks.